You heard it said that wrestling is the toughest sport out there. Well, let me submit another idea. Wrestling is also the most emotional. Wrestling is a controlled fight, mano a mano, same weight class, fully exposed. When you lose, there's nowhere to hide. Based on my limited perspective from the emotional pressures that other sports face, I believe that wrestling places a unique weight on that individual. Yes, this sport is personal, and that's exactly why I believe what you say as a coach in those situations matters. My name is Jacob, and welcome to another episode of Under the Fig Tree. So on this channel, I document the things I learned from different ventures in my life, and the venture at hand is this is my first year as an assistant coach at a D3 wrestling program. And this season, I'm realizing something that I didn't fully understand before, and that's what I say during a match and how I say it really does carry more weight than I expected. So this video isn't about hype, it isn't about yelling louder, it's about understanding what actually serves an athlete when everything starts to compress, like the time, the pressure, emotions. So when I think about what helps from the corner during a match, it really falls into three types. And the first one would be technical reminders. So we're talking about short, simple cues used to adjust the athlete's technique. The second one would be situational awareness. So making them aware of things like the score, the time. And the third one is belief. And we're not talking about hype here. We're talking about reinforcing who they are when doubt starts to creep in. So those are the three types of callouts I like to use during a match. So let's get into them. So the first call out that I like to use during a match is the technical reminders. And the key word here is reminders. So you don't want to give them a 10-word salad of what you think they should do in a match. It should be short, simple, and familiar. You should have already taught them this, or they should know what you're talking about. And that's why terminology is very important in the room as well. You should go over terminology, what we're calling these moves. I know there's strategies like calling a move something different that other opponents don't know about. For me, I call a move Bo Bassett, and that's what we call it. But no one else calls it that, and we know what we're talking about, but other opponents don't, so we have the advantage there. But the callouts should be as simple as like heavy hips or shoot, high leg over, things like that. Things are fast to say, you could cue them in. And this cuts through the chaos of the match when they're tired, they can't think right. And it reminds the athlete what they know or what they could do. Like we're the coaches on the outside looking in, we could see things that are not as obvious to them, or they can't feel it or they can't see it. So we make those call outs. We hope that they trust their coaches, they do it. And one of the most fulfilling things is for them to do a move that you said for them to do. So that's how I use technical reminders. So the next one is situational awareness. This is a very important one. And one of the first things that pressure takes away is perspective. Like I said before, we're the coaches on the outside looking in, and we could see everything. And one of the best things we could see is situational awareness. We could see when you're close to the match, you should circle in. We could see when your back is close to the mat, are you going to get defensive pinned? We could see the scoreboard easy. We could see the time. And I don't like when our athletes look at the scoreboard at the time, so I make sure I make those call outs so they don't look away from their opponent because bad things could happen. But things like that. When you're in a match, you're honed in on your opponent, and some things, information you block out, and some of it's important, especially in situations like your opponent's winning. You should tell them how much time you have left so they could stay low in their stance and they could not give up points that they don't need to. So that's why situational awareness for a call out is very important, and it really does reassure your athlete of what's going on and how much longer they have to hold out for to keep this opponent at bay. So that's how I like to use situational awareness. So the third and final type is belief and identity, and I think coaches underutilize this one. But as a formal wrestler, I understand like the last 3 or so minutes before you step on the mat is very crucial. There's just so many things going through your head, like negative thoughts, self-doubt, things like that. And it's hard to manage sometimes. And I also remember as a wrestler, when a coach pulled me aside and gave me some encouraging words before I stepped out on the mat, that also helped me out a lot. So I try to do the same for my athletes. I can't do that all the time because we're at a tournament, I might be coaching someone else, I'm focused on the next match. But when I can, I'll pull an athlete aside and give them some encouraging words for this opponent they're about to wrestle. And I definitely do see some positive things from doing that. You can also do it when they're wrestling during a live match. So you would say things like, "That's a good idea," or "Keep it up, you're looking great." And sometimes you just judgmental over yourself as a wrestler. You're just like, "I'm probably not looking that good." And I know this because when I wrestled, some of the matches are recorded. I'm like, man, I didn't feel that well in that one. But then when I watched the recording, I'm like, I'm moving pretty good. I look pretty good. And then, so encouraging words, just reminding them who they are is good enough to beat this person. That's what it's all about. And I did talk about it's not about hyping up your athlete. But at the same time, there's nothing really inherently bad of doing that. But some athletes just don't know how to manage it right. They'll get too hyped up and then they'll wrestle too hard in the first period. Then they have no energy for the rest of the match. So they don't know how to manage their energy right. So that's dangerous. But I do a little bit more strategically. I'll say something like, "Show them the dog and you hoo-hoo." And that gives them the smile sometimes before their match. And, there's science behind that. When you smile, it produces some endorphins that makes you feel good. And I had a situation like that in high school where I laughed for some reason and I was kind of stressed out in that match. But when I smiled, I just started feeling better during that match and I started clicking. But before I felt like awkward and maybe a little, some doubt in me. But when I smiled and laughed, I'm like, okay, I'm feeling better. So that's a little extra, but it does work as well. And as a Christian man, I do understand how it says in Proverbs that the tongue has the power to give life or death. So I'm going to choose to give my athletes life. And because I know that Bible verse, I understand the power of the tongue. And I want to say only good things to my athlete, especially in those situations where they definitely need it. So that's how I utilize belief callouts during my matches. So there's also things that you shouldn't say or communicate to your athlete during a match. And the first one is you shouldn't communicate frustration to your athlete during a match. I know there's times when they're not doing like anything right and you're just so frustrated, but the best thing you could do is not communicate that frustration to your athlete if you want them to have a chance of winning. So they could definitely sense your frustration during a match, and what they do when they sense that frustration is they're just judging themselves even more during that match. Like I said, this is a very emotional sport, and they're in a vulnerable spot. You don't want to communicate frustration towards your athlete when they're not doing anything right. I know you want to, but just don't do that. The next one is critiquing or correcting your athlete during a match as well. So I know that there's coaches out there that they'll, talk about things that happened way back then, like 30 seconds ago or 10 seconds ago. It's like, let's focus on the next period or what's happening right now. And when they do that, mostly it's usually during like blood time or when they have a break in action. It's like, let's focus on what's happening next and not critique them. Like they're grabbing their athletes and they're putting them in holds. Like what happened is like, no, first off, your athlete is tired. They want to be touched. And, this is not the time or place. That could wait. I know there are situations where you kind of do have to critique them. It's like when you're in top and bottom, and a lot of athletes or some wrestlers are addicted to like the switch. So they want to get 2 points rather than 1 point. So you're like, just stand up, get one. And they're just doing the switch over and over again, spending all their energy focusing on that 2 points and not getting their one. And obviously you could communicate to them like, just get your one, stop going for that switch, and, just hammer in their head that don't go for the switch anymore, get that one. So there's situations like that. But obviously this has to do with speaking life or death. They're in an emotional state. They're vulnerable. You want to communicate good things to them so that they can perform their very best. So that's just some things not to say during a live match. So the takeaway for this video is, in the heart of the moment, say what helps your athlete stay present and just save everything else for later. That's just the best way to do it. So that's it for this episode. This has been Under the Fig Tree FM. You can like, subscribe, and by the grace of God, do your job. Thank you. Bye-bye.